I feel like I've won the lottery in life to be able to do what I love to do. I can't imagine doing anything else.
All you really need to make a knife is a desire, some way to heat the steel, a hammer, and something to beat on. So see, it's already starting to look like a knife.
This particular imagery is kind of a representation of the 3 men that I've been hiking and climbing these mountains with.
Meet some folks who find their satisfaction in unique, one-of-a-kind creations and who are passionate about crafting a living.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Bruce, the one that's in the lathe will be like this right here.
Wow.
Something similar.
Wow. So, Aaron, it looks like you've created a birdhouse condominium. How many hours?
I've got 300 to 400 hours just in this one.
Whoa. And what's this going to be?
That become one of these here.
Incredible. So, have you put a price tag on all this?
Kind of hard to put a price on it when just the tree alone here is 100 years old out of Martha's Vineyard. It's a grapevine. And then I've got 21 different kinds of wood in this piece.
Incredible. But I assume there's always a price?
Well, money does talk.
Hi, I'm Bruce Reichert, and welcome to Outdoor Idaho. We're here in Mountain Home with Aaron Cornell, who has turned birdhouse making into an art. And that's the cool thing about Idaho. Everywhere you go, you're going to find people dedicated to crafting a living.
The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. The early history of mankind can be defined by the weapons used to smite one's enemies. It was centuries later that swordsmiths took weaponry to a whole other level, by forging various steel alloys to create a blade that was stronger than anything seen before. Today we know it as Damascus steel, named after the ancient city in Syria. In a workshop above Highway 21 outside of Boise, there's a man who is a master of this once lost art. He certainly knows how to make weapons, but these days his main interest is creating enduring kitchen knives.
Carbon's what makes iron into steel. So we're making a Damascus pattern that I invented in 2003, I believe it was. I call it River of Fire. What we call Damascus these days is more technically called pattern welded steel. It's a very similar technique to what the Japanese did, in where you take 1 or 2 particular kinds of steel and keep folding them to create a pattern in the material and mix it, kind of like if you were making bread dough is a very good analogy. There are a few people in the world that can replicate that nowadays. It was lost for a very long time.
Bill Burke's unique skills are a big reason the public is once again fascinated by what knife makers are able to create.
The unfortunate thing is people somehow think that you can make a high-quality knife in 3 to 6 hours, which is not the case. It takes a good solid week, 5 days, of 8 to 10 hours a day in front of that forge pounding that steel. That's just to get the bar of steel. That's not counting making the knife. And there's about a 98% loss of steel. I start with 2 stacks of steel and they're about 11 pounds a piece. So 22 pounds of steel. Is that cool or what? And when I get done, I get 1 knife that weighs about 8 to 9 ounces. That's all that's left. So see, it's already starting to look like a knife.
Burke was a body and fender guy, working on cars and making knives part-time, when a tornado in Tennessee turned his life upside down and put his knives on the map. One of his 5-inch hunting knives saved 2 men trapped inside a crushed semi. A story in Blade magazine spread the word that Burke's small knife had cut through the steel cab, allowing the men to escape moments before the truck burst into flame. At the next knife show in Atlanta, Georgia, Burke's knives sold out in less than an hour.
I quit my day job and just started making knives full time. I don't know what to say about it, just that I'm blessed that people like my work enough to pay me to do it. It's phenomenal to think that people appreciate my work that much.
Burke figures he makes around 40 or 50 knives a year. It's an exacting process, a time-consuming process, and it's catapulted him into the ranks of the very best. In fact, he's one of only about 120 in the world who hold the title of Master Bladesmith, accredited by the American Bladesmith Society.
And even somebody as dumb as I am are going to learn something in 20 years, so.
Truth of the matter is, to become a master bladesmith, your knife has to cut a 1-inch hemp rope with one swing.
He's a bit nervous.
Cut a 2x4 in half twice, and then still be able to shave hair off your arm. And after that, you have to put your knife in a vise and bend it 90 degrees without it breaking.
It looks like
90 degrees?
Yep.
But don't get caught up in all that, says Burke.
Not even a crack.
All you really need to make a knife is a desire, some way to heat the steel, a hammer, and something to beat on. Having a grinder of some sort helps, but it's not really necessary. You can harden it, temper it, and sharpen it without really any grinding. Now, it'll take you 40 years to get there, but you can do it.
Of course, to do what Burke does also requires a fair amount of strength and the willingness to put up with excessive heat. It also helps to be able to reformat antique equipment to make it do exactly what you need it to do. Knowing some math also comes in handy.
4.625 is 5/8, right?
As does an understanding of chemistry.
Now, as you heat steel up, the molecules actually go through a phase change. When it does that, the steel becomes non-magnetic. So these little thin bright ones are the nickel layers that we put in there. So I manipulate them until all those lines line up in a continuous pattern.
And then a whole lot of patience.
Set it in there for now, and now it's time for a cup of coffee.
In school, we all heard about the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, but what exactly does that mean?
What does it mean? It just means somebody built a roaring campfire in a bank of iron oxide and found this strange lump of stuff in the bottom when it went out, right? And maybe the wind blew, they had a big, white man's fire. It got hotter than normal. It created steel out of some iron oxide that was there in the dirt. And then he's like, oh, what's this? Man, it's harder than anything I know. Look, it'll break my bronze axe.
Burke's career may have begun with hunting knives, but these days most of his business is making high-performance kitchen knives.
When our first little recession hit there in 2007, hunting knives, which were my mainstay at the time, I couldn't hardly give one away. So now that's probably 90% of what I do is kitchen knives. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Japan for 28 days in 2006. But yeah, Japanese swords are probably why I'm so fanatical about knives. And the kitchen knives I make are Japanese-style kitchen knives.
His knives normally sell for $2,000 to $3,000 a piece, and there's a backlog of about 2 years. But for Chef Taro Kobayashi, the price and the weight is definitely worth it.
When I look at a set of knives, if I have my collection of knives in front of me, the thing I know when you pick up a Burke is that it's going to do the job. It is going to perform better than most knives, always. I do have a knife that is, I've just never seen anything really like it. It's like a peacock feather. It's kind of like mathematically nerdy, perfect in a sense. From all the knives that I've used, and I've probably used 50 custom makers, and Bill is my personal favorite. I believe him to be one of the best knife makers in this country.
Elk, deer, and moose shed their antlers in the early spring as their bodies recover from winter. What they leave behind is treasure for a certain kind of hunter, a shed hunter. Ashley Delanis and her family scout for wildlife over the winter.
Let's go find some sheds.
Let's go.
So that come spring,
Sweet.
they have a pretty good idea where to look for sheds.
It's a perfect day to be out shed hunting. You can see everything. There's, not a lot of grass that has grown in to cover those potential antlers that we would have otherwise missed.
But it's not all fun and games. Ashley is working. She sees promise in the discarded crowns.
I first check for the strength of it, whether or not it's been out in the weather for too long and it's brittle and breaking, or if it's a fresh brown that just dropped.
Shed hunting came first as a hobby, but now it's a passion, and finding the perfect antler for her work is a mission.
You guys, come here. Oh, it's a big one. Nice and brown.
It's like a Jackson Hole find, huh?
This little hook thing on it.
Yeah,
That's a cool one.
can't get much better than this.
Antler hunting is popular in areas where people normally hunt for deer, elk, and moose.
You kind of got to think like a hunter. You got to know where the deer have been, especially obviously the bucks. That's what we're out here for, is their antlers. I want to check out this shed over here. It might be worth something we should hike over to. We are pretty notorious for spotting an antler a couple, 3-4 ridge lines away. All right, you two boys go get it.
Her husband Blake and son Trip enjoy the adventure of shed hunting as much as Ashley.
Woohoo! We'll hike to wherever we need to pick up that shed.
Yeah, I think. That's right.
Sweet. This is beautiful.
What's
Look at
this
that.
in?
We love coming out here and just getting lost in the woods.
Looking like creatures from another planet, the shed hunters head home with their trophies strapped to their backs.
I found a beautiful 6-point brown elk shed. That was the highlight of the entire day for me. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of hiking yesterday.
I wonder which one we should do.
Ashley caught the creative bug from her mother, an artist herself. Even her house reflects a love of expression. As a young mother, she began to pursue an art career in earnest. After enrolling in art classes at Idaho State University, she discovered she could support herself through school by selling her art. 10 years later, Mountain Girl's portfolio is varied and includes work in stained glass, silk art, and clay. Her first business profits came from creative clay light switches. They sold so well locally, she was able to make a living. Her most recent success is with an Idaho-inspired piece.
With the Idaho pieces I make, there's 2 different variations. There's a stained glass kind, and then there's a fused glass kind. With the fused glass, I do the same process of cutting out the shape of Idaho, and then I overlay imagery, whether that's a hand-cut moose, or a pine tree, and then I incorporate some frit work, and then I fire that in a kiln for an entire day. The stained glass Idahos I use with stained glass, and I use copper foil and solder, and I solder images onto those designs. Oh, look at this.
Working with antlers is the newest endeavor.
But I think I like how this one sits. It doesn't roll.
She draws on her love of the outdoors for inspiration.
Stay upright. That's good. I can't really map out a plan when it comes to building an antler piece. I can have an idea maybe with colors or a focal point, whether that be a hiker or a moose, but the end piece is always a surprise even to me. Elk antlers, for me, symbolizes stamina, community, and strength. If you look at just how the elk have to live and what they have to do just to survive.
Ashley has a unique appreciation for elk country. Her own personal journey includes summiting 7 of the 9 12,000-foot peaks in Idaho. Known as the Twelvers to those who climb mountains for sport, most of these peaks reside in the Lost River Range, in the center of the state. She climbs with her father, brother, and husband. As any mountain climber knows, it takes a certain determination and motivation to summit tall peaks, not to mention physical stamina. It's the same force that drives Ashley to compete in the world of art.
When I conquer a big mountain like one of the Twelvers, it definitely elevates me to this way of thinking that I can conquer anything. I can make something big and beautiful. I can do something challenging and new and different.
And with that mindset and ambition, Mountain Girl will undoubtedly continue to climb to new heights.
The Lost River Range is extremely close to my heart, and this piece was completely inspired by it. And this particular imagery is kind of a representation of the 3 men that I've been hiking and climbing these mountains with. So it's my view and interpretation of me seeing them and being my rock and support as we climb these extremely challenging peaks.
Every now and again, you run across a guy who has truly found his calling in life.
My name is Kerry Schwartz. I'm a custom saddle maker living in Salmon, Idaho.
The fact is, Kerry Schwartz is one of the top custom saddle makers in the country. He started working in a holster shop as a teenager and actually went to school to study saddle making. But he got antsy.
Quit college and I went to the mountains and become a mountain man and a trapper. Started working with horses and mules at 19 and already had the leather experience. Where the two came together, leather and horses, of course, is saddles. Saddles represented the supreme challenge in leather. So when I found a home with this vocation, I knew this was it. This is what I was called to do.
Bob Laux is a longtime family friend. He's owned one of Kerry's saddles for decades and was there when Kerry set up his own saddle shop in the early 1980s.
He bought an old saddle maker out in Salmon, Joe Hoover, and operated right on Main Street for several years.
It was a one-man operation. I had to manage a storefront and build saddles in the back. That was tough. That was really hard.
Kerry soon realized that retail wasn't exactly his cup of tea. After all, he seemed to identify more with cowboys and outfitters than with shopkeepers and businessmen.
I ultimately wanted to be a saddle maker. I didn't want to be a merchant. So I took the leap and got rid of the inventory and moved off of Main Street.
His old storefront is now home to a hair boutique and tanning salon. As for Kerry's one-man operation, well, it's blossomed into a home-based success story, complete with international clients and a robust web and social media presence.
At one point in time, I think I counted up, there was friends and followers in 40-some different countries around the world. And that's pretty cool.
But if you set web pages and social media aside, you can see that Kerry has remained reliably old school in the way he approaches his craft.
I'm a traditionalist in the sense that I like the forms of the leather, rawhide, wood. So I build my saddles in a very traditionalist kind of mindset. Leather to me is one of those unique fibers that's just been around thousands of years. It's authentic. And the smell of it, the feel of it, the quality of it, just a fantastic medium. They've not been able to replicate that with any kind of synthetic material.
To say that Kerry is meticulous would be an understatement. His shop is immaculate. The materials he uses are top grade, and he's very particular about whom he uses as his suppliers.
I get my saddle leather from a tannery in St. Louis, Missouri. It's an old school kind of tannery. The hand tools that I use are all handmade. Some of them are over 100 years old. The round knives I get from a friend in Rochester, Minnesota.
There's a lot of good saddle makers in the world. The thing that's different about Kerry Schwartz is Kerry is an artist. Most people that carve leather use a template. I've never seen Kerry use a template.
Generally speaking, saddle makers don't consider themselves artists. They consider themselves craftsmen. Although I will say this, I would answer to both.
Building a quality custom saddle takes time, and lots of it.
I make between 6 and 10 saddles a year. I used to be in that 15 to 20 per year category. But part of it is I can't seem to resist the temptation to make this a little nicer. For example, the machine sewing and the hand sewing has gone from 5 stitches per inch on the horn and the cantle binding to 8. Well, I just doubled the amount of time that takes to do that.
So at only 6 to 10 a year, how much will a Kerry Schwartz saddle set you back?
My base price currently is $5,250, but the best question to ask on pricing would be what's the average price of the saddle I make, and it's probably about $8,000.
His saddles have gone for as much as 5 times that, or more. As you can see, they speak for themselves. But they also speak to who Kerry is, a man of supreme talent, strong convictions, and dedication.
To me, it's how much do you care? To go from 5 to 7 to 8 stitches per inch, you have to care.
John Roos can attest to Kerry's character. He and Kerry wrangled cows years ago.
He wants perfection, and that's the way he does things. And that's what makes a good saddle, is somebody that takes that time and puts his soul, his heart into what he designs.
John owns one of Kerry's saddles that he bought before Kerry became well known.
What I like about my Kerry Schwartz saddle is that it fits me very well. I prefer that saddle over any of the rest of them I have, and I have about 10 saddles. As long as I can crawl on a horse, I'll be riding that saddle. I'm hoping another 30 years, but at my age, that may be a little hopeful.
Trish Doughton is Bob Loux's daughter. Bob went in with Trish's husband to give her a Kerry Schwartz saddle for her birthday.
Kerry got it done, I believe, in August of 2001. I've had it ever since. I use it a lot, probably 4 or 5 days a week, and it's a great saddle. I love it. It's like anything, you kind of get what you pay for. Probably if I was a collector, I would preserve it more than use it, but it'll last me a lifetime, you know?
Now it's time to trim this all off to fit my stitch line. Americans are starved for hands-on accomplishment. And saddle making is a classic example of that. To engage in something that's real, it's tangible, it's beautiful, it's functional. My number one goal has been to offer people an opportunity to enjoy the things that I create and give them a diversion, a distraction, if you will, from the chaos and absurdity of life. I think that's what I'm trying to do, more than anything.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. To find more information about these shows, visit us at idahoptv.org.